Hello, my name is Stefanie Powers, and I am the next guest on Screen and Beyond.
On Screen and Beyond, an inside look into the entertainment world featuring interviews with people from the movie, TV, and music industry, news on upcoming TV and DVD releases, and the rumor mill. And now, here's the host of On Screen and Beyond, Brian Zemrak.
Here we go again. Get ready for another episode of On Screen and Beyond, the show that each week brings you an interview with a guest from the movie, TV, or music industry and keeps you updated on what's coming your way as far as upcoming new movies, remakes, sequels, and prequels, as well as what is heading your way on DVD, Blu-ray, and streaming. This is episode 731. I'm your host, Brian Zemrak, and our guest this week on Screen and Beyond was the girl from U.N.C.L.E. She was Jennifer Hart on Hart to Hart. That's right. Stefanie Powers is going to be joining us on this episode. Once again, she was a past guest a long time ago. So get ready for that. Stefanie is coming up in a few minutes right here on Screen and Beyond. On this episode, we're going to be looking at a lot of different things. We look at another Meet the Parents sequel, a new Leonardo DiCaprio movie, and so much more. So get ready. I hope that everybody is subscribing to whatever podcast platform you get us on, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Amazon or Alexa, Podbeam or Spotify, whatever. That's where you get all the audio versions. Or if you want a video version of the show, most of the shows, most of the time, we get our guests to do the video portion too. But you can catch that on Spotify or you can get it on YouTube. So couple of ways you can get it there, but wherever you are, please subscribe. That'll help us out. And also every time the episodes are released, you get them right off. Sometimes we're not on our usual Sunday schedule like we normally are, but it's going to come, but you got to turn around and look for it. So if you subscribe, you don't have to look for it. And be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, On Screen and Beyond. Just Google it. You'll find it out there. And if you have a suggestion for a guest or have a question, you can email me at feedback@onscreenandbeyond.com. And I love hearing your suggestions. So let's get right into this week's show. Remakes, sequels, and prequels next, right here on Screen and Beyond.
Please hang up and try again.
Remake, sequels, and prequels. John Hamburg will direct the fourth film in the Meet the Parents franchise. Now, the original cast with Robert De Niro, Ben Stiller, Terry Polo, and Blythe Danner will return with Hamburg, who is going to be co-writing the movie for the fourth installment. He was also the co-writer of the three previous Meet the Parents movies. So he's got a little experience there. And Sydney Sweeney, well, she's going to star in and produce a thriller called I Pretended to Be a Missing Girl. That's happening over at Warner Brothers. And Coco 2 is in the works for 2029 over at Disney. And a new retelling of the story of the Count of Monte Cristo is in the works. And on June 6th, you can look for John Wick's spinoff, Ballerina, in theaters. And that's it for remakes, sequels, and prequels. Coming up next on Screen and Beyond, it is upcoming new movies. Upcoming new movies. It looks like Rupert Friend is joining Chloe Grace Moretz in a serial killer thriller called The Edge of Normal. Filming will start this spring, so we'll keep an eye out for that. And Leonardo DiCaprio will star in a Paul Thomas Anderson thriller. It's about a gunslinger, and it's called One Battle After Another. And Kevin Dillon, who was nominated for an Emmy for Entourage, has joined the cast of the thriller The Highest Stakes alongside Dylan Walsh, who was a past guest here at On Screen and Beyond. Be sure to check that out. And also Seth Green. That's it for upcoming new movies. Next on Screen and Beyond, movies and TV on DVD and streaming. Movies and TV on DVD and streaming. Well, A Knight's Tale debuts on 4K Ultra HD as a limited edition steelbook on May 20th. And Rick and Morty, the anime, will be available to own on Blu-ray and DVD on April 29th. And John Carpenter's Starman, available as a limited edition 4K Ultra HD Steelbook. It's coming our way on May 27th. And Outlander Season 7 will be available as a collector's edition Blu-ray set and on Blu-ray and DVD on May 27th. And on June 10th, Dexter Original Sin lands on Blu-ray and DVD. And that's it for movies and TV on DVD and streaming. Coming up next on Screen and Beyond, it's TV and entertainment time. TV and entertainment time. CBS and LL Cool J have revealed that he will be returning to his role as Sam Hanna on the upcoming April 21st episode of the show. And Mae Whitman will join Mary McDonnell and Jane Seymour in the 12 Days of Christmas. Now, this is going to be a 6-episode limited series that's in the works over at Hallmark. So they continue with their Christmas movies all the time. This is going to be a Christmas limited series. So we'll keep you informed on that. And Netflix has given May 1st as the premiere date for 4 seasons. It's a comedy series from Tina Fey based on 1981 film of the same name for the 4 seasons that was written, directed, and starred Alan Alda. So that's something that's going to be coming our way. And that's it for TV and entertainment time. Next up on Screen and Beyond, Stefanie Powers of Heart to Heart and so much more right here on Screen and Beyond. Today's guest on Screen and Beyond has been nominated for multiple Emmys and Golden Globes, has appeared in many movies and TV shows, including McClintock with John Wayne, Palm Springs Weekend with Troy Donahue and Connie Stevens. She was the girl from U.N.C.L.E., guest starred on multiple times on Love American Style, and starred in The Feather and Father Gang. She starred on the long-lasting show Heart to Heart with Robert Wagner, and she was a guest on this show back in 2009 in episode 53. It's Stefanie Powers. Stefanie, welcome back to On Screen and Beyond.
Well, thank you. It's interesting. You mentioned a lot of work that that was really not very significant in my memory. All the movies were 37 of them, and
Wow.
about how many movies for television, how many miniseries, all of that. Those I remember. But Love American Style, I think I only did it once, and with my ex-husband. And he got every once in a while I see a photograph that reminds me of that unfortunate experience. And he played the role of somebody who got, on their honeymoon, who got the handle of a door stuck in his mouth. It was very interesting.
It was a different kind of show.
Different kind of comedy. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, first off, I want to congratulate you because last year you received the United Nations Agents of Change Award for your work with the William Holden Wildlife Foundation, correct?
Well, I was very, very honored to be among a group of 25 others who were recognized for their work in different fields. I was the only one who was involved with flora and fauna, conservation, wildlife conservation of flora and fauna. And the others were involved with humanitarian issues, but all of it was meant to highlight this work in an ebook, which is available for free on the internet as Visions of the Future, Visions for Change, and we're highlighted as some of the leaders of some of those efforts to make those changes, those definite necessities in some of the work that all of us are doing to promote those changes.
Yeah. Now, what exactly is the William Holden Wildlife Foundation? What do you do?
Well, Bill created in his life when he was one of the biggest movie stars in the industry in 1954. 56, sorry, he went out to Kenya as a hunter because in those days, prolific amounts of animals, of game was available and in actual need of culling because the human population was beginning to encroach on the areas that the animals it had been the animals' domain. So hunting was actually reserved for just a few people who could afford it because it was extremely expensive and you had to commit to quite a long time if you wanted to actually go after what they used to call the big five, which is elephant, rhino, lion, leopard, and the buffalo. And there were three friends, or the two friends and the three of them, the three musketeers who went out to Kenya for the big five. And it was on that particular trip, just as the emergency was on in Kenya, where the freedom fighters were trying to overthrow colonialism in Kenya. It was the beginning of the anti-colonial movement, and nobody was traveling in the northern part of Kenya. And there was a hotel where they would stay every time the camp had to be moved to a new hunting block because they weren't allowed to get so many animals in each numbered hunting block. So when they would repair themselves while the camp was being moved and they'd go to this upcountry inn, they soon fell in love with it and fell in love with the view of Mount Kenya, which is the tallest mountain with a permanent glacier on the equator in the world. Eventually, when they were on their third or fourth trip back to the Mwengu, which was this beautiful upcountry inn, somebody said, well, why don't you just buy it? And it was for sale because there were no customers going up to the north. And so they did. The three of them bought this hotel and turned it into the Mount Kenya Safari Club, which became a kind of jewel in the crown for travelers in those days. But mind you, when he eventually bought the 2,000 acres that surrounded the Mount Kenya Safari Club, which had been a farm, it was 1959, I think, that he created the first ever game ranch for the preservation of species. Nobody had the word conservation in their vocabulary. It's important to remember because we have, sort of memory loss and perspective loss as a result. Tourism, mass tourism, did not actually start, at least for Americans, until somewhere in the mid-1970s. Most people in the 1950s in the United States didn't even have a passport, let alone did they travel abroad. So this was, really quite adventurous, but for, the two Americans that were part of this trio of men. But Bill's vision as a conservationist, sort of in his cells, he was a kind of conservationist visionary, was that there would be eventually human encroachment on all the wildlife areas. And so there were certain species that were going to be endangered or at least encroached upon. He saw that in 1959. He created the Mount Kenya Safari Club, Mount Kenya Game Ranch, which is now a conservancy. And at its height, it had breeding programs of 37 species of East African wildlife, 5 of which are no longer visible in the wild. In fact, the symbol of the game ranch was the East African bongo, which is a mid-sized antelope, not a drum, a mid-sized antelope, beautiful creature. And I just got news that 17 bongos are going to be flown from the United States, compliments of DHL. Thank you, DHL. They are remarkable when it comes to wildlife conservation. So we give all our business to DHL. They are transporting them and they're going to be reintroduced, hopefully successfully, because it's very dodgy to transport animals that have been zoo raised. And we will keep our fingers crossed that they will be able to endure the trip, as well as their first encounter with the kind of, bugs we have in East Africa. But they are being returned to their homeland, their land of original genesis. And we will have great hope that they can reestablish themselves in the areas where they once existed.
Has it been done in the past that they've been able
Yes,
to?
it has. It was done by the Mount Kenya Game Ranch. And 13 bongos were sent from the United States in various ways. Unfortunately, some of them did not adapt well, but they did have time to breed. So they brought their gene pool with them. And out of that group, and combination with our own group of bongos that were on the game ranch, and I was one of the directors and owners of the game ranch. 80 bongos were born. Some of them fell ill to some unusual diseases that swept through some wildlife. But out of that, I think there were about 50 some odd left. And the new owners of the conservancy have worked with the wildlife department and have released some onto the mountains of the adjacent Mount Kenya Forest Reserve. And they're still in a compound where they're still being watched, observed, and hopefully protected. But we see how that all works. It's not always the greatest thing in the world to release and rewild animals who were raised in captivity had supplemental food, and they were protected. So it's a process, and it's not always successful, but we have great hopes that it might be for some.
Sounds like it's very close to your heart, this endeavor.
Of course, it's a passion. So when before Bill died, he had always wanted to build an education center for local people to learn about their own wildlife and their own environment, and in learning about it, understand the vital role they play in protecting it and preserving it for not only themselves and the quality of life, but for future generations. So he wasn't able to that scratching that you hear in the background is one of my 5 dogs who are dying to get in here. Should I let him in? Because it's driving me crazy.
It's up to you. No problem.
Okay, come on. My big boy,
That's one thing about dogs is when they know when you're on the phone or on screen, and they want to make sure that they're there
they're
too.
heard, yes. Come on, stop. Don't do that. Oh gosh. Anyway, so where was I? So the education center. So after his death in 1981, I formed the William Holden Wildlife Foundation, whose mission statement is wildlife conservation through education and alternatives to habitat destruction. So as such, we've been functioning as a 501c3 public charity since 1982. And our education center receives on a continual basis about 11,000 students a year. Our outreach programs with another 6,000 people, something like that. We are in 7 locations, and our soil regeneration program is spawning new interest in the restoration of habitat and the restoration of farmlands, so further habitat doesn't have to be destroyed, in search of more farmlands once other land, the land that's been over chemicalized ceases to produce anything. So all of that is part of our education program. And as such, I am the founder and president of the William Holden Wildlife Foundation.
Hi, I'm Leonard Maltin, and I'm on Screen and Beyond.
Wow, that's incredible. And that's great to see that you're doing that. It has to be done.
Well, nothing is actually, we can't ever rest on any accomplishments. We have to keep going because the demand is there. There's an ever increasing demand. And the truth is that we're not going to solve the climate crisis with electric cars. We're going to solve the climate crisis by rehabilitating habitat, by restoring the green belt on our planet instead of the unbridled exploitation of all green belt everywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is how we create oxygen from the green belt. It absorbs carbon, it produces oxygen, and we're not getting that into our heads.
Yeah.
We think we're going to solve it with electric cars. That's not the answer, as I think has been exposed to many people who've been interested.
Yeah.
So what we need to do in every way is restore habitat for biodiversity and to recreate greenbelt. The fastest way that it can be recreated is by planting bamboo in your gardens, in everywhere that you can. The most astonishing, excuse me, it's the most astonishing plant, and it can grow in all kinds of weather. So it's the fastest growing, and it can produce oxygen like crazy.
Oh.
And it has all sorts of other uses. I have clothing that's made out of bamboo cloth. If you go to Hong Kong and you see all these skyscrapers being built, the structures around the skyscrapers, what's it called, that we use the piping for, what's it called, when you're building a building and you put scaffolding.
Oh, okay.
So the scaffolding for all these tall buildings is made out of bamboo. Giant bamboo that's huge, that comes from the Philippines. Can you imagine skyscrapers that have a scaffolding of bamboo? So you see, it's one of the most important and most usable species of vegetation and it can solve a lot of our problems. That's just one little hint about we can do personally and individually to help restore the balance of carbon and oxygen on this planet.
Yeah. See, I learned something I did not know. And I thank you for that.
Very easy, isn't it?
Yeah. Huh. Well, as far as Heart to Heart, 45 years it started ago, and
yes, we did the pilot 45 years ago.
45, yeah. What is so enduring? How come it's so enduring, do you think?
I don't know. I guess if it was all put in a bottle, I could bottle it. I think it promoted. It was entertaining. It was entertainment in a kind of wholesome, romantic, hopefully comedic, romantic way, and of course, it was fantasy. It was kind of based on the Thin Man movies. Did you ever see those?
Yes, I've seen some of those. Yes,
Myrna Loy and William Powell.
Yeah.
There were many Thin Man movies, and the rapport was always so smart and sort of slightly chic and very entertaining. And so that's a bit what we were fashioned over. They had their dog, and we had our dog Freeway, but we had Mac, and that was an added icing on the cake.
Yeah. Now, the chemistry between you and Robert Wagner on that show, so many people actually thought you were married.
Well, then we did a good job, didn't we?
Yes, definitely. Were you and are you still good friends?
Absolutely. Excuse me. Was it last week? A couple of weeks ago, it was his 95th birthday, and we were on the phone, lots of were singing songs. And yes, absolutely. I was with him on his 94th birthday last year, but this year he felt that he was so saddened by the fires that he didn't feel comfortable coming to LA and celebrating while people were suffering still from recovery. We
Yeah.
have a long way to go before recovery. Quite frankly, I'm along with a lot of people who feel that it's really rather inappropriate that we try to host the Olympics while we don't want to divert any money to the Olympics when we should be rebuilding vast amounts of housing.
Yeah. So many people lost houses, Palisades just
Well,
gone.
13,000 alone in the Palisades.
Yeah. I mean,
13,000 houses.
yeah.
Can you imagine? It's to look at it is, I mean, you've seen all the things on television, but I happened to see something in a little peek of it in Altadena. It looks like a war zone. I
Horrible.
lived through 3 Malibu fires when I lived in Malibu. It's rather frightening when you're in the middle of it.
Oh,
I lived
yeah.
in the hills above Malibu, and so the fires would come all around the property, and we had all the animals evacuated, and then we put wet towels on our heads, and all my friends would come and we'd stand on the roof and put out fires. But the one thing they didn't talk about in the reports is that not only did we have extraordinary winds, but the fire itself creates wind by its own volition, and because it's burning, and as you know, I mean, if you light a fire, it has its own kind of velocity.
Hmm.
And to add to that, there's an indigenous plant called a sumac bush that is all over the hills of Southern California. And when the sumac bush explodes after being ignited, the sparks go everywhere, and the noise is deafening. It sounds like a grenade, a hand grenade, and it
Wow.
explodes, and sparks go everywhere. So it was I guess you could say it was the perfect storm, but I have never in all my days experienced wind that was equal to this, gusting at 80 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It was indescribable.
It's incredible. Jeez. Now, you mentioned Max from Heart to Heart, Lionel Stander. He was he wasn't the star of the show, but he was an integral part of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Was he a nice guy?
He was a pivotal part of the mechanism of the household and the rapport between all of us. He was an extraordinary man. I mean, he had a career that was amazing, and he was rather famous for his testimony during the House on Un-American Activities Committee, that horrible black period of was like a witch hunt
Hmm.
during the McCarthy era. And his testimony quoting the Constitution is one of the most sterling uh, testimonies throughout that entire investigation. It was a dreadful period of time. People ruined their lives. They jumped out of windows. It was a hideous period of time. And Lionel eventually was blackballed, and he blacklisted, and he eventually left the country and found refuge in Italy, where he did, I think, about 80 movies.
Wow.
You know, did a lot of those spaghetti movies,
Hmm.
but then he did some actually wonderful films in Europe. And Wagner met him in Rome when he was doing some films in Rome during the I guess it was 60s, I think it was. And so they became friends in Rome. And when Lionel was thinking of coming back with his family to live in the United States, it was about the time that Heart to Heart was being put together. And RJ, we call him RJ, had this brilliant idea of having Max play the butler on Heart to Heart. So we just, it was an embarrassment of riches.
It just clicked. All the three of you were just like, and Freeway too. Four of you,
Yes,
you
of
all
course,
click.
Freeway.
Yeah, you all click so well. And now, when the show ended, first off, why did the show end? Was it the ratings going down, or what was it? But then they continued with all those movies, so it couldn't have been because of ratings, because they wouldn't have made those movies, correct?
Well, it was a shock to all of us. I was in Paris doing a mini series called Mistral's Daughter. And we had, before I left to do that series, we had no notion that the ABC was going to cancel us. We were actually planning to go and film in Paris, and there were two sort of outlines for stories. One where we went to the fashion shows, the what they call the défilé in Paris, and Freeway runs off and falls in love with a French poodle. And so there was that one, and then there was another idea for a show. So imagine my surprise on a Sunday night before I was going to go to work on Monday morning, when I got a telephone call from our producer, then Robert Wagner and Tom Mankiewicz, who had really rewritten the original Sidney Sheldon idea and created the Heart to Heart franchise, called me and said, "We're not on the schedule." So unfortunately, there was a new man at the head of the programming department of ABC who decided that he was going to cancel 7 shows on primetime television. I don't know how this was possible, which he did. And ABC went from #1 in the among the 3 networks to #3 or maybe #4. I think we will never know the name of this man, because after we were canceled and they had a disastrous and next season, we never heard from him again. So it was about 5 years before someone from NBC decided that it would be a great idea to put us back on the air in movies for television. So we did 8 movies for television of Heart to Heart. And that sort of put a period on the end of the sentence for us.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was just so great that, but like you say, it doesn't make sense that you would cancel a hit show.
Wasn't my choice.
Yeah, no, I know. But it just, as a viewer, it's like, why do they make them? But we hear about that a lot, where an executive comes in, says, "Okay, I clear the house," and
oh yes,
the
and
viewers are like, "What's going on?"
And it's usually a disaster.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Robert Wagner, and I'm on screen and beyond. I hope you'll be listening.
I wanted to talk a little bit about The Girl from U.N.C.L.E.
Uh-huh.
Now, I always enjoyed that show. I thought it was
great. Thank you.
It was
very different than The Man from U.N.C.L.E., but
yes.
Then so were our writers. They created these preposterous ideas. Go, Ozzy, stop. Ozzy
wants to get the last word in.
That one likes to sit here and bark and let the other ones do the job, So let's see, I was under contract to Columbia Pictures at the twilight of the old studio system. And I think we did 17 motion pictures. I did 17 motion pictures while under contract. And just about the time that the studios were all letting their contract players go, they sold my contract to MGM to do The Girl from U.N.C.L.E. Now, I was a contract player. I had no choice in the matter, but it was a very good choice. And so I was quite happy to do this. And it was great that Noel Harrison was available to play my sidekick. At the time, we never realized that this was the first time a female had been the star of an hour-long television series. So I didn't learn about that or even realize that that had actually been the case until just a few years ago when somebody was doing a show on PBS about pioneers of television, and they asked me to be on it. And I thought, well, I'm hardly a pioneer, but they said, oh no, Girl from U.N.C.L.E, pioneering television series.
Mhm.
But we were so fortunate during that period of time that because so many people had been let go of their commitments with studios, we had the most glorious choice of guest stars. I mean, we had Peggy Lee and Ruth Roman, guest stars in one of our shows. We had Cesar Romero. We had Ann Southern. We had Boris Karloff in drag in the Mother Muffin affair. I mean, that was an embarrassment of riches. We had the most delicious opportunity to have these great people as guest stars on our show.
Wow, that's great. Of all the people that you've worked with, I mean, and you've worked with a lot of amazing people over the years,
I've
but
been fortunate.
is there anybody in particular or a couple of people that, you were just blown away that you were able to work with this person?
Well, let me just say that unfortunately, I was never able to work with William Holden. We lived together, but we never worked together.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I can't really isolate it to that. I mean, everybody, I was uh, so fortunate to work with so many stellar names.
I know, it's
I
incredible.
really think that it was just the greatest privilege to work with all these people, and I learned something from every one of them.
Yeah.
So I can't say which was my favorite.
Yeah. Well,
Yes, of course, I loved John Wayne. Of course, I loved Maureen O'Hara. There was Glenn Ford. There was Lana Turner, Ava Gardner, whom I adored, and we were friends. On and on and on and on and on.
incredible. Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Just
Stefanie,
very, very lucky girl I am.
yes, we're going to run out of time, and there's so many questions I have to ask you, but I want to finish up with one final question. And
Okay.
this takes us away from all the incredible things that you've done. And when you sit back and relax, what do you enjoy watching on TV and movies? What's your favorite TV shows now and of the past? And what's your favorite movies?
But I don't really relax that much. I mean, I don't actually
I
have
take
time
it.
to sit back. These things. No, I live in two other countries, and so I'm on the move a great deal, and I travel incessantly, usually expeditions or it's always something to do with conservation or my own curiosities. I'm a student of Egyptology. I love going on digs. My fingernails are short, and I like to dig around. So I don't sit back with the daiquiri at the swimming pool. That's not my idea of a vacation.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, that Egypt stuff sounds incredible to me because that's always interested me. Yeah.
I think it interests everybody. And there's a new find. Excuse me, Ozzy. There's a new find that they claim it's the greatest find since the discovery since 1922 when they discovered Tutankhamun's tomb. It's Tutmos II, who in the lineage of Tutankhamun, or Tutankhamun, which is the way the hieroglyphic is pronounced, he kind of is the descendant, or they are all descendants of Tutmos II. So it's a very significant find,
Wow.
and all of the archaeologists on the Egyptian side, as well as the man who spent 17 years of his life trying to find this
Hmm.
entry, are really being celebrated now
Wow.
as justifiable.
Hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. Well,
Right.
Stefanie, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time and sharing with us all the stuff that you've done. I've learned a lot for one thing too, and I thank you, and I want to thank you for all the shows and all the great times that we've been able to watch you, and it was just so much fun seeing you on screen.
Thank you so much. And thank you for this opportunity to be able to talk to your audience. And hopefully some of them will be curious enough to go to the website of the William Holden Wildlife Foundation, which is www.whwf.org.
There she is, Stefanie Powers, a very busy lady, and we thank her so much for sharing her time with us here to let us know what's going on with her life and Heart to Heart and all of that. Don't forget to check out our first interview with Stefanie back in 2009. That was quite a while ago, and it was episode 53. So go back into our rerun section or in your podcast provider. Just scroll all the way back because it's probably way down the line on there. But you can hear that one, and hope you'll enjoy it. And you can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to tell a friend about On Screen and Beyond so they can enjoy some of these interviews too, that I'm sure they're going to, find their favorite TV, movie, and music stars as they share their stories and projects with us each week here at On Screen and Beyond. And we have another fascinating guest coming next week. And I think you're going to enjoy it. And I hope you will join us too. So that's it. That's a wrap for this episode of On Screen and Beyond. So until next time, when we once again take you on screen and beyond, I'm Brian Zemrak. Take care.